What if a K9 dog suddenly interrupted a courtroom session and wouldn't stop barking at a defense attorney's briefcase? At first, everyone thought it was just a distraction. But what this loyal dog sensed, and what officers later discovered inside that bag, would unravel an entire murder trial and expose a chilling secret no one saw coming. In today's gripping true story, we follow Titan, a retired K9 recently brought back into service, as he makes a split-second decision in a courtroom that stuns the judge, the jury, and even the prosecutors. What was hidden in that briefcase? Why did Titan react the way he did? And how did this single moment change the fate of a teenage girl accused of a terrible crime? If you believe in the extraordinary instincts of animals, and their power to uncover the truth when humans can't, this is a story you won't forget. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life heroic animal stories every week. Now, let's dive into the case that shocked a courtroom and a nation. They called it the Foster Girl Murder Trial. That was the name splashed across every newspaper and news banner for weeks. The case had all the elements of a media storm: a rich, well-connected victim, a troubled teenage girl from the foster system, and a murder that had more questions than answers. The courtroom in downtown Hartford was standing room only. News vans lined the curb outside. Everyone wanted a front row seat to see Lily Carter either walk free or be sentenced to life. Lily was only 17. She sat silently at the defense table, hair tucked behind her ears, hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her eyes were distant, too tired for someone so young. She had been in and out of homes her entire life. And just a year ago, she had been placed with the Hargraves, a respectable, church-going family. And now, she stood accused of killing her foster father in cold blood. Everyone believed she did it. Everyone, except Detective Marcus Ramos. Ramos wasn't known for being sentimental. He had served nearly 2 decades on the force and worked some of the city's darkest cases. But something about this case never sat right with him. The physical evidence was thin. No murder weapon was recovered. And Lily's fingerprints were only on a broken glass in the hallway, not near the scene. The prosecution, led by State Attorney Joanne Maxwell, relied heavily on motive. A foster girl angry at the world, lashing out. But Marcus had seen enough in his career to know that sometimes the easy explanation was the wrong one. That's why he brought Titan. Titan wasn't just a K9, he was the K9. A 6-year-old German shepherd who had once located a kidnapped boy buried beneath a barn floor. He was trained for scent detection, emotional response, and crime scene analysis. After surviving a knife injury during a raid 6 months prior, Titan had just returned to duty. This was his first appearance back in the courtroom. Officially, Titan was only accompanying Ramos as emotional support during his testimony. But unofficially, Marcus had learned to always trust Titan's instincts, especially when things didn't add up. The courtroom was tense as Ramos walked to the stand, Titan calmly trotting at his side. Judge Holloway gave a polite nod. Titan had been in his courtroom before. The dog sat near the witness stand, alert but relaxed. Cameras flashed. Prosecutors readied their notes. The jury looked bored. The defense attorney, Ms. Evelyn Harper, began flipping open her laptop at her table and reaching for her rolling briefcase. That's when it happened. Titan's body stiffened. His ears twitched. Marcus, seated on the witness stand, noticed immediately. He gave a small tug on the leash, whispering, "Easy, buddy." But Titan didn't relax. His nose lifted into the air, nostrils flaring once, then again. Then he stood up, silent at first, and began walking, slowly, deliberately, across the floor of the courtroom. The judge glanced up. The jury leaned in. Ms. Harper, halfway through opening her briefcase, paused and looked up, startled. Titan's pause echoed on the marble tiles. He walked straight past Lily, ignoring her entirely, straight past the judge, straight toward Ms. Harper's briefcase. And then he barked. One bark. Sharp, commanding, not aggressive, but urgent. A warning, a signal. The entire room froze. Marcus stood up. "Titan," he called. But the dog didn't move. His eyes locked on the briefcase like it was a live grenade. Gasps broke out. "What's going on?" Judge Holloway demanded, standing. I don't know," Harper stammered, pulling her hand away from the bag. The courtroom bailiff reached for his radio. Prosecutor Maxwell looked furious. "Lily," for the first time, lifted her head and stared. And then Titan barked again, louder this time, pawing at the briefcase. Something was inside that bag. Something Titan recognized. And what no one in the courtroom knew yet was that what they were about to find would tear the case wide open and expose a truth more shocking than anyone was prepared to handle. For a moment, no one moved. The courtroom, once buzzing with tension and side glances, fell into stunned silence. Titan stood with one paw raised, nostrils flaring, his eyes locked on the sleek black briefcase that defense attorney Evelyn Harper had placed beside her laptop. The bark had been so sudden, so forceful, and so precise, that it didn't feel random. It felt like an accusation. Ms. Harper's hand trembled slightly as she pushed the bag an inch away from herself. Judge Holloway leaned forward. "Detective Ramos, is your dog trained to detect narcotics?" Ramos shook his head slowly, never taking his eyes off Titan. "No, Your Honor. Titan is trained in scent detection for blood traces, explosive residue, and," his voice tightened, "evidence connected to specific crime scenes." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Joanne Maxwell, the lead prosecutor, stood up abruptly. "Your Honor, I request a brief recess so we can investigate." But the judge raised his hand. "No recess. Not yet." "Bailiff, open the briefcase." Harper jolted upright. "Objection. That's attorney-client privilege property." The judge turned to her sharply. "Counselor, when a police K-9 interrupts court proceedings with this level of response, we don't ignore it. If there's something inside that briefcase triggering him, I need to know what it is. Now." The bailiff approached cautiously, as if the briefcase might explode. Titan didn't move, didn't growl, didn't bark again. He simply stared, as though he already knew. The click of the latches echoed. The room held its collective breath. And then, the briefcase opened. Inside, a few pens, a yellow notepad, a bottle of water, a flash drive, and a sealed manila envelope. The bailiff picked it up carefully. "It's addressed," he said, "to Lily Carter." Harper's face drained of color. Maxwell stepped forward. "May I?" she asked. Judge Holloway nodded grimly. She tore the envelope open with gloved hands, carefully removing the contents. It was a stack of printed photos. Color, clear, dated with digital timestamps, and what they showed made her eyes go wide. She turned one around slowly to face the judge. It was a photo of Gregory Hargrave, the murder victim, standing inside a dark basement room, holding a video camera. Behind him, chained to the wall, was a girl who looked terrified and underage. The courtroom gasped. Judge Holloway's gavel banged. "Order! Order!" Ramos rushed forward and grabbed the top photo. He recognized the girl. She had gone missing 2 years ago. And the case had gone cold. No one had connected it to Hargrave. Until now. Titan sat beside the briefcase, tail unmoving, expression calm, like he'd done his part. Like he had known all along that the truth was in that bag. Judge Holloway turned to Harper. "Counselor, how long have you had these?" Harper's mouth opened and closed. I was going to submit them after closing arguments. I didn't want to prejudice the jury before." "You had physical evidence of the victim's criminal behavior and you didn't disclose it?" "No, I was protecting my client. From being sentenced to life for killing a predator? Or from the truth?" Ramos knelt and gently patted Titan. "Good boy," he whispered. Titan leaned against his leg, eyes never leaving the photos now being passed through the courtroom. Harper was escorted out for questioning. The photos were sealed as new evidence. Lily, still stunned and silent, looked over at Titan, the first living soul who had defended her that morning. Her eyes welled up with tears. The photograph shook the room. Not just because of what it showed, a terrified young girl chained in a basement, but because of who had been holding it. Evelyn Harper, the defense attorney entrusted to protect Lily Carter, had been in possession of damning evidence, and withheld it. Detective Ramos couldn't stop staring at the image. He recognized that girl. Her name was Madeline Reyes. She'd gone missing 2 years ago on her walk home from school. The case had haunted the city for months. And while it had eventually gone cold, some officers, including Ramos, had always suspected she'd been taken. Now here she was, caught forever in a photograph with the man everyone thought was a pillar of the community, Gregory Hargrave. The very victim Lily was accused of killing. Titan sat calmly by Ramos' side as the courtroom descended into a whirlpool of voices. Reporters were already rushing out to file updates. Court officers were on their radios. The judge had called for a closed-door recess. But no one could unsee what they had just witnessed. Maxwell, the prosecutor, held a stack of photographs, her hands slightly shaking. "There are more," she said to Ramos. "They're all time-stamped, all inside that same room. Some with different girls." Harper, now seated and flanked by court officers, looked pale and cornered. "I didn't know the full extent," she muttered. "I received them anonymously. I was going to use them after the jury." "No," Judge Holloway said, his voice steely. "You had legal and moral duty to disclose this the moment you had it. You sat on evidence that not only changed the nature of this case, but possibly covered up multiple crimes." Ramos turned toward Harper. "Why risk your entire career over hiding that?" She hesitated. "Because I didn't trust the system." The words hit harder than expected. She looked up, eyes rimmed red. "Lily's just another kid the world was ready to throw away. I didn't know if the jury would believe her. I didn't know if the press would spin it. So I waited. I wanted to present it with maximum impact. But Titan beat me to it." Maxwell was seething. "You don't get to manipulate justice like that. Evelyn, you're not the system. You're part of it." The judge ordered the court into recess and cleared the room. Ramos and Titan were escorted to a side chamber where the prosecution team and the lead detective reviewed the remaining photographs. There were 5 girls, all different ages, all looked scared, all trapped in the same concrete room. Some photos were recent, and one girl looked familiar. Maxwell leaned forward. "Wait, that's Lily." Ramos squinted. It was. There she was, in one of the images. Younger by a year maybe. Arms bruised. Expression vacant. "She was there," he said quietly. She knew. Suddenly, the narrative had flipped. Lily hadn't just been a foster girl with a motive. She had been a victim. One of them, maybe the last. And Hargrave, the man she allegedly killed, had been a predator hiding behind the mask of a foster parent. But it raised deeper questions. If Lily was in that room, how did she get out? Why hadn't she spoken about it? And most importantly, was there someone else involved? Maxwell voiced the thought first. He couldn't have done all of this alone. This place, these setups, someone helped him cover it up. Ramos looked at Titan, who stared up at him expectantly. The dog had known something was wrong. He had exposed the evidence that humans missed or ignored. But his job wasn't finished. "Then we follow the scent," Ramos said. Maxwell nodded. "We reopened the missing persons files. All of them." As Ramos and Titan walked out of the chamber, he glanced back toward the courtroom door. Lily sat there, still cuffed, still accused. But now, the weight of guilt had shifted. And they were just beginning to understand how deep this case really went. The sound of chains rattling echoed in Lily's mind. Even though she sat quietly in the private interview room, uncuffed for the first time in days, her fingers still rubbed at the phantom marks on her wrists. Across from her sat Detective Ramos. A quiet presence, not interrogating, just waiting. Titan lay beside him on the floor, calm and steady, but watching Lily with something more than curiosity. It was Titan who had turned everything. Without him, those photos might never have come to light. Lily knew that. She just didn't know what to say. "You were in that room, weren't you?" Ramos finally asked, sliding the printed photograph across the table. The concrete walls, the chains. Lily glanced at the image. Then away. "You don't have to say anything," he added gently, "but I think you've carried this alone for too long." Her voice was hoarse when she finally spoke. "He told me if I said anything, I'd disappear like the others." Ramos nodded slowly. "The others? There were more?" Lily looked down at her lap. 3 girls before me, 1 after. I don't know their names. He didn't call us by names." Ramos clenched his jaw, trying to steady himself. "Gregory Hargrave?" She nodded. "He kept a hidden room under the shed behind the house. Told the rest of the family it was an old wine cellar. But it was locked, soundproofed." Ramos took notes silently, letting her speak at her own pace. "First few nights, I screamed. Then I stopped. He always smiled when I cried. Said I should be grateful. Said I was safer there than in the streets." "How did you get out?" Ramos asked. Lily hesitated. Her eyes flicked to Titan. Then she said, "It wasn't a heroic escape. One night, he didn't come down. I thought maybe he forgot me. But then I heard him arguing with someone upstairs. Who? I think, his wife. She knew. She had to. This was new. Ramos leaned in. You think she helped cover it up? She used to bring down the food sometimes. But she never looked at me. Is she still alive? Lily nodded. She moved out a month before the night it happened. Ramos glanced at Titan, then tapped the table. We'll find her. Lily's hands trembled. You don't understand. That night, he tried again. But something in me snapped. I hit him. I didn't mean to kill him. I just wanted him to stop. You acted in self-defense. Lily. But you didn't run. I did run, but not away. I ran to the police station that night. But when I saw the receptionist, I froze. I thought, no one would believe me. So I left. I went back to the house, sat in the hallway, and waited for them to find him. Ramos' heart sank. The silence surrounding Lily all this time hadn't come from guilt, it came from fear. And trauma. And the crushing certainty that no one would care. But one dog did. One bark changed everything. That evening, Titan and Ramos returned to the Hargrave property. The shed still stood behind the main house, untouched since the initial sweep. A padlock hung on the door, new, not rusted. With a warrant in hand, Ramos and a forensics team broke it open. Inside, gardening tools, old boxes, and a trapdoor. Titan was the first to bark. He pawed at the floorboards, nose pressed into a crack. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Flashlights lit the way. Concrete walls, chain hooks, mattresses on the floor. It was all still there. Whoever had cleaned the house after Hargrave's death had ignored this place, or intentionally left it untouched. But one thing was clear. Someone had kept this hidden. And based on the faint footprints in the dust, someone had been down here recently. Ramos knelt, studying the prints. They were small, narrow, female shoes. Hargrave's wife, he muttered. She came back. He looked at Titan. The dog was sniffing a far corner. Then, tail stiff, he barked once. Another discovery. A hidden drawer behind the concrete wall. Inside were files, names, photos, even receipts for out-of-state property transactions. It wasn't just abuse. It was a network. And the story wasn't over. The documents hidden beneath the trapdoor were worse than anyone expected. Not just photographs, but names. A detailed ledger listing foster children, their assigned case numbers, and status columns marked with cryptic symbols, and X for deceased, A for missing, and, chillingly, a C next to Lily's name. See? Maxwell whispered, scanning the list. What does that mean? Ramos's jaw tightened. Could be compliant, could be controlled. Whatever it is, someone was running a system and tracking these kids like property. They weren't just dealing with a predator, they were facing the wreckage of an entire cover-up. And at the center of it all was Ellen Hargrave, Gregory's widow. She had vanished shortly before his death, telling friends she needed space. But now, every piece of evidence pointed to her as more than just an innocent bystander. Her name was on the property records. Her signature was on the adoption paperwork. And her absence was timed too perfectly to be coincidence. We need to find her, Maxwell said. I've already got Titan on it, Ramos replied. That afternoon, Titan paced inside the police station's K9 unit. Restless, Ramos had laid out items from the Hargrave home, Ellen's scarf. A photo of her, a sealed letter found in the basement. Titan sniffed the scarf once, then barked and ran to the door. He's got something, Ramos muttered. The trail led out of Hartford and into the quiet lakeside town of Winchester. 2 hours north, a cabin, registered under an alias but linked through one of the property receipts they found. The air was colder here. The lake sat still under gray skies, trees rustling faintly in the wind. As they approached the house, Titan tensed. Smells her, Ramos said under his breath. They knocked. No answer. Ramos signaled, and 2 officers moved to the back while he stood at the front porch. Titan sat stiffly beside him, eyes locked on the wooden door. Then, a movement in the window. Police, Ramos shouted. Open the door, Ellen. No reply. The side officers radioed in. We've got a window cracked. Possible entry point. Do it. Moments later, Ramos and Titan moved in through the front as the rear team cleared the kitchen. The house was silent, except for the soft creak of footsteps upstairs. Titan let out a low growl. They climbed slowly. Bedroom doors creaked open, one by one, until they reached the master room, door ajar. Inside, Ellen Hargrave stood frozen by a desk, hands trembling over a box of documents. "Ellen," Ramos said gently, "it's over." She didn't look angry. She looked tired. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Gregory, he made me part of it. If I spoke, I would have gone to prison too." Ramos stepped closer. "So you stayed quiet, while girls disappeared, while your husband built a torture chamber under your house." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice." Suddenly, she reached for something in the desk drawer. Titan barked, loud, sharp, and leapt forward, knocking the drawer closed with his paw. Ellen collapsed into the chair, sobbing. Inside the drawer? A passport, cash, plane tickets to Canada. She was going to run. Ramos looked at her. "You're not leaving. You're going to tell us everything." Back at the station, under recorded testimony, Ellen cracked. She described Gregory's system, how he manipulated social workers, paid off officials, and used his home as a funnel for targeted foster children. Ones without advocates, ones he believed no one would miss. "Why the code in the ledger?" Maxwell asked. Ellen hesitated. The C meant candidate for the ones he thought could be trained. Lily was his favorite. He said she was obedient until she wasn't. Maxwell's voice was ice. "And the others?" Ellen went quiet. "Gone," she said at last. Ramos left the room, needing air. Titan followed him out, tail swaying, eyes sharp. They both knew this was far from over. The building loomed like a ghost from another century. Its bricks were faded, windows boarded, and the paint on the sign above the archway barely legible. Winchester Children's Home. Once a state-run orphanage, it had been shut down nearly 15 years earlier after funding cuts and rumored abuse allegations. Most had forgotten it ever existed. But Titan hadn't. From the moment they parked, the K9's posture changed, ears sharp, tail stiff, body low. Ramos could feel the electricity in the dog's movement as they approached the front steps. Joined by Maxwell and 2 forensic officers, Lily, with permission from her public defender, had come along. She said she had been here before, brought once for a medical exam when she was 10. She hadn't spoken since the car ride. Titan walked ahead, nose brushing the ground, then snapping upward toward the rotting front doors. Ramos turned to Maxwell. "You sure this place is supposed to be empty?" She nodded. "City records show it's been unoccupied since 2010. No utilities, no security contracts, just sealed and forgotten." "Yeah," Ramos muttered, "too conveniently forgotten." They pried open the rusted door, wood splintering against itself. A wave of damp, moldy air hit their faces. The inside was worse than the outside. Collapsed ceilings, shattered floor tiles, broken furniture scattered in what used to be the front lobby. A faded mural of cartoon children playing under a tree still clung to the far wall. Partially peeled. Titan growled, low, almost inaudible. "Where?" Ramos whispered, tightening the leash. The dog turned left, nose to the floor again, then barked, short and firm, at a hallway partially blocked by fallen plaster. With some effort, the team cleared a path. The hallway led to a back wing, dark and suffocating. The air grew colder. Flashlights cast long shadows. They passed a nurse's station, then old patient rooms. Then Titan stopped and stared. Maxwell shone her flashlight forward. "What is that?" A heavy metal door, clearly not part of the original architecture. Newer, welded, sealed tight with 2 padlocks and reinforced hinges. Someone had installed this after the building had been condemned. "What the hell?" Ramos said under his breath. "Why lock a door in a building no one lives in?" He radioed for a bolt cutter unit. Lily finally spoke. "That door wasn't here before." "You sure?" She nodded. "I remember this hallway. There used to be a playroom behind that wall. Bright yellow carpet. That door," she shivered, "wasn't there." Titan barked again, this time sharper. Maxwell narrowed her eyes. Whoever came back, they were hiding something. "Here." It took 5 minutes to break the locks. With a groan of rusted hinges, the door finally opened. The smell hit them first. Rot. Decay. Inside was a soundproof chamber, newer than the rest of the facility, lined with dark foam. A security camera hung in the corner, powered down. But real. Mattresses. Chains. A single teddy bear on the floor. Lily couldn't breathe. She backed away as Maxwell rushed forward with gloves, snapping photos. "This is recent," she muttered. "None of this matches the original building materials. This was built after the orphanage closed." "But why?" Ramos asked. Titan stepped into the room. Cautiously, he sniffed the wall, then began pawing at a corner near the floor. A hidden panel. Behind it, a plastic container. Tightly sealed. Inside, a stack of USB drives, files, and, most disturbingly, a small locked box with initials carved into it, G.H. Gregory Hargrave. Maxwell's voice trembled. He used this place too. And he wasn't working alone. Outside, the sun was setting, casting golden light across the overgrown yard. Lily stood by herself, arms wrapped around her chest. Ramos walked over. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "I remember that bear. I left it behind." He didn't ask for more. He simply knelt beside Titan and whispered, "You just blew this whole thing open again, didn't you?" Titan looked up, tongue out, as if to say, "We're not done yet." And they weren't, because someone else still had the keys. And someone was still out there, running what Gregory Hargrave started. The evidence found in the hidden chamber changed the case overnight. The USB drives were loaded with video logs, transaction records, and encrypted communications. Most disturbing of all were the names, not just of victims, but of those who enabled the system. Private foster care operators, former state officials, even 2 retired detectives. But one name surfaced more than any other. Charles Whitner, a former city commissioner, publicly retired a decade ago. But the metadata on the documents showed he'd remained very much active in managing and protecting Gregory Hargrave's operation. He was the final keyholder to the orphanage property. He had signed off on its official condemnation, even though it had clearly remained in use. When confronted with the evidence, Ellen Hargrave finally admitted the truth. Charles gave Gregory protection. In exchange, Gregory gave him access. Maxwell felt sick. They had to move quickly. By 6 a.m. the next morning, a tactical team was assembled. Titan was outfitted in full K9 vest. Ramos double-checked his sidearm. Maxwell coordinated with state police and the FBI. Charles Whitner wasn't just a bureaucrat, he was connected, insulated, and dangerous. The location was a private estate on the edge of Maple Hollow, gated, forested, and isolated. The kind of place where secrets could live forever if no one came looking. They didn't knock. The team moved in with quiet precision. Titan led the way, his nose guiding them along a winding stone path toward a rear shed. The house seemed untouched, but Titan barked once, sharp and alert, toward the back door. "Movement," one of the agents whispered. Ramos nodded. "Go." They breached. Inside, silence. Then the creak of floorboards above. Second floor. Ramos and Titan bolted up the stairs while Maxwell and the team swept the first level. Every room they passed was meticulously clean, like a model home. But it was too clean. Titan barked again, this time at a bookshelf. Ramos stepped forward. Titan scratched at the base. And with a gentle click, the bookshelf shifted. A hidden passage. Behind it, a staircase descending into the foundation. Flashlights out, guns raised. Titan went first. The basement was massive, reinforced with concrete. Air was cold, too cold. And then, the noise. A faint hum. Electronic. They followed it to a door. Inside was a server room. Racks of drives, monitors, and a wall of surveillance feeds. All dark now. But the timestamp on one frozen feed read, "Live, 6:02 a.m." Whitner had known they were coming. Suddenly, a voice echoed from behind. "You're too late." Ramos spun around, weapon drawn. Charles Whitner stood at the entrance. Hands raised, a smug look on his face. "I assume you have a warrant?" Maxwell appeared behind him. "We have 5, and 2 federal subpoenas." He chuckled. "Then let's get this over with." But as he was cuffed, he turned to Titan. "You know, that dog ruined everything." Titan growled. Ramos stepped closer. "No, that dog exposed everything." Back at the precinct, Titan lay beside Ramos' desk while boxes of evidence were processed. The files recovered from Whitner's server confirmed it all: the trafficking ring, the use of orphanages and foster homes as recruitment pipelines, the bribery web, but most chilling were the planned expansions, notes on 2 other cities. including one new facility under a nonprofit shell. Maxwell walked in with a folder. DNA confirmed, she said. 3 of the girls in the orphanage were buried on Hargrave's summer property. 2 others are still unaccounted for. Ramos sighed. And Whitner? He's lawyered up, but with this much evidence, he's not walking. They looked at Titan, who was now sleeping peacefully, as if the storm had finally passed. Lily was moved to a protective foster family. For the first time, she slept without nightmares. And the courthouse? The one where this all began? Titan was being honored there next week. But for now, he rested, because the dog who exposed a system, who barked not just at guilt, but at injustice, had finally brought peace. The courtroom was full again. But this time, it wasn't for a trial, it was for a ceremony. A special recognition from the city of Hartford, honoring Detective Marcus Ramos, Prosecutor Joanne Maxwell, and one 4-legged hero who had done what no one else could. Titan, the judge who presided over Lily Carter's original case, stood at the podium. His robe freshly pressed, voice echoing in the chamber. Today, we acknowledge a service member who does not speak with words but has spoken volumes with action. A dog whose instincts brought truth to light. Justice owes you. Titan. Applause thundered. Cameras flashed. Titan, wearing a formal black K9 vest and a gold badge clipped to his collar, sat upright, calm and noble, as if he understood everything. Lily was there, sitting quietly in the front row. Her hair was pulled back, a white ribbon pinned to her jacket, the symbol of survivors. Her foster advocate held her hand, but for the first time in years, she didn't look afraid. When the judge asked Titan to approach, Ramos gently tugged the leash. Titan stood, walked confidently to the center of the room, and sat beside the podium. Then something happened. As the applause faded, Titan turned his head and barked. Just once, not aggressively, not playfully, but sharply, at a man standing near the rear doors, half hidden in the crowd. The room went silent. Ramos's eyes followed Titan's line of sight. The man, older, thin, dressed in a gray jacket, had just turned to leave. But after the bark, he froze. Maxwell narrowed her gaze. "Who is that?" she whispered. Ramos reached for his radio. "Security. Stall the man by the exit. Now." 2 guards intercepted him as he tried to slip away. He mumbled something, flashed a fake ID, but it was too late. Ramos was already approaching. Titan beside him. "Name?" Ramos asked. "John Teller," the man said quickly. "I'm a journalist." Ramos didn't blink. Titan thinks otherwise. Maxwell caught up, holding her phone. She opened a photo taken from the recovered USB drives. One of the masked men in the orphanage basement. Only his profile was visible. She held it beside the man's face. Perfect match. The courtroom gasped as officers cuffed him. The journalist said nothing, but his eyes widened when he realized what had exposed him wasn't a file or fingerprint. It was a dog's memory. 3 weeks later, the full extent of the trafficking ring had come to light. With Teller's arrest, investigators uncovered encrypted connections to similar cases in neighboring states. Dozens of children had been saved. Arrests were ongoing. And Titan? Titan was now semi-retired. Ramos let him spend his mornings on long walks by the river. In the evenings, they still returned to the station, but not for work. Just to visit, to remind everyone that heroes don't always wear badges or robes. Sometimes, they just bark. Final scene. Lily walked alone into the courtroom, this time, not as a defendant, but as a witness. She stood at the front and turned to the small group gathered, new officers, social workers, law students. She had been invited to speak. She cleared her throat. "When I was locked away, I thought the world had forgotten me. That justice only worked for people who mattered." She looked at Titan, who sat beside Ramos at the back. But then a dog barked. And for the first time, someone listened. She smiled. "His name is Titan, and he gave me my life back." If this story moved you like it moved us, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful true stories where animals become the unexpected heroes. Speech balloon, and we'd love to hear from you. What do you think about Titan's instincts? Do you believe animals can sense justice in ways we can't? Right finger drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice helps keep these stories alive, and reminds the world that heroes come in all forms, even with 4 legs.